Are you ready to master the waves of medical device product development? Well, wax up your surfboard because you are listening to Inspired by Amua. And here is your medical device product development expert, that Hawaiian-hearted hostess who will help you hang 10, Megan Alonso.
E como mai and aloha. You're listening to Inspired by Amua, where we help you master the waves of medical product development. Each week, we interview guests that educate, guide, and inspire to give you the skills you need to hang 10 in medical device development. If this is your first time listening, Amua is spelled I-M-U-A, and it's a Hawaiian word meaning to advance forward despite rough waves. There are plenty of rough waves in medical product development, so keep listening because we've got you covered. So today, joining me on our interview, I have a wonderful person. I think we met, it was back in 2010. She is always on the move, literally, and she did just move. She does a lot of work with JDRF, which is the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. She's super creative. She's a photographer, a trained architect and designer, and what is also really cool, she's a fellow Texan and an Aggie. So we both have military spouses, and so we keep seeing each other over the years. Please welcome Lauren Nygard.
Hey.
Lauren, are you ready to hang 10 today?
Heck yeah.
All right. So I gave a little intro on you, so kind of fill in the gaps with that. Give us some more details about your personal life.
Sure. I'm married, like you mentioned. We have a really cute dog. Her name is Cash. She's asleep on the floor next to me right now.
So is
like
Abby,
you mentioned,
by the way.
Oh, fun. We just moved to North Carolina from San Diego. We're still getting settled. It's been a little harder move than I anticipated, but that's okay. We'll get it figured out one of these days.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, what keeps you busy besides moving?
Yeah, besides moving, I'm a photographer, so I specialize in family portraits and military homecomings. So I've been busy with that. I also recently started working for a photographer in town, helping him out with a couple of projects here and there. I do a lot of volunteer work, like you mentioned, with JDRF. I'm also involved with our local women's club out here. So lots of volunteer work. And in my free time, which I don't have a whole lot of, but in my free time, I really like reading. I started reading a lot last year. I had a goal to read 50 books in 2015, wow. And I didn't make that goal, but I read 35, and I don't think I had read 35 books in my life on my own free will until last year. So this year, same goal. I might hit it this year. I don't know. I'm excited, but yeah. Reading is my new cup of tea.
Mm-hmm. Good. Is it real books, or is it audio or Kindle or like the ebooks?
Yeah, so I do a mix of all of those. I love audiobooks when I'm editing photos, but I also like sitting on the couch with a physical book. So. Mm-hmm. I do ebooks because sometimes they're cheaper. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I have a preference of the three.
Yeah.
They're all so good.
Good. So we have you on the show today because you've been a patient whose life has been impacted by a medical device. Insulin pump. So yes. Share your story with that. You know, when were you diagnosed? I know this from talking to you before that you were diagnosed at a young age.
Yes.
So kind of walk us through that process, and then the early childhood memories that you have with when you weren't using a pump, and kind of just walk us through that process.
Okay. Yeah, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 4. I don't really remember life before it. Uh-huh. So I think that's kind of nice because a lot of people struggle with, making a change between, living a regular life and then having to be dependent on taking insulin. And for me, that was never an issue. So I'm kind of thankful for that.
Yeah.
But when I was a kid, I was doing multiple daily injections. There were insulin pumps around when I was first diagnosed, but they were huge and not widely used. But then when they became smaller and more widely used, my parents tried to convince me for a really long time to try one. And finally, when I was of driving age in high school, my mom was like, if you want to go to driver's ed, you're going to have to get on an insulin pump. And I was like, ugh, okay, fine. I was scared to have something attached to me all the time. I don't know, it seems so foreign. That's the main reason I didn't want to even try one. But at the time, my doctor recommended a mini med pump. So that's what I got. And it was actually really awesome. I had, when I was younger, I've never really been super self-conscious about having diabetes, but when I was younger, I did deal with people looking at me when I was giving myself a shot in the middle of a restaurant and that type of thing. I wasn't one to go to the bathroom to do that because, for one thing, I don't think that's sanitary, and for another thing, I mean, I didn't feel the need to go to the bathroom every single time I needed to give myself a shot. So if I was out in public, I would just do it, and it wasn't a big deal, but it was kind of annoying to see people react to that. And I know they didn't do it intentionally or to hurt me, but it definitely, I do remember that happening. And what I loved about going on the pump was that I could easily give myself insulin and no one would know. A lot of people, when I got on my pump, thought I was messing around with a pager because those were cool back then. Nowadays, I feel like people are like, oh my gosh, is that an MP3 player? No, it's a medical device, but that's cool. You can think whatever you want. But yeah, making the transition ended up being really good. Like I said, I felt like I had more freedom because I didn't have to whip out a vial of insulin and a syringe every time I wanted to eat. So that was nice. I could snack more often. Who doesn't like snacks?
I know.
And then more recently, I switched to a different type of pump. I'm currently on an OmniPod. I think when I was on the mini med, it was definitely the best on the market, or so we were told. And then I learned about OmniPods. Maybe it was when I was in grad school. So sometime between 2006, 2008. I don't remember exactly when. And they were advertising them as tubeless pumps. And I was like, well,
so tell us.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that. Because since I don't have an insulin pump, I'm just trying to, so the tube would it go from the patch to your device?
Right, exactly. So on a typical pump with a tube, you have a little machine. It's about the size of a deck of cards or so, that you wear on yourself. So I would typically wear it in my pants pocket, or if I was wearing a dress, I would try to fit in my bra or on the back or something. And it is attached by a tube to the infusion set.
Yep.
So the infusion set is the part that goes in you. And I would typically wear that on my abdomen just because that was where it was most comfortable for me. The difference between that system, which there are several manufacturers that make that type, but OmniPod is a different brand that makes a type where instead of having the infusion set and the pump, the actual device separated but still on you, the OmniPod is a little pod. Mm-hmm. It's about 2 inches long, or maybe 3, I don't know, 2 inches wide, and then about a half an inch deep that you stick on you. And the infusion set and that thing are all contained within that one pod. So I control my OmniPod with a separate little machine that's about the size of a deck of cards. That I use. It not only checks my blood sugar, it also communicates with the pod and tells it how much insulin to give me at any given time. So usually, before I went on the OmniPod, I would have the little pager looking thing on my pants pocket. And when I wanted to eat, I would tell it how many grams of carbohydrate I was eating, and it would give me insulin. So now the pod is always on me. So it's adhered just with a big sticker, essentially. And I can go anywhere with it on me. But in order to give myself additional insulin, then I would need the controller that is a separate piece. So what that means for me is I usually am out and about, and I'll have the controller in my purse or in my pocket or whatever nearby. But the pod is always on my person. But the main reason I switched to the pod is because one day I suddenly realized that you can put the pod almost anywhere on your body. You can put it.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, you can put it on your arm, on your abdomen, on your leg, on your back, lower back, butt, wherever you want to put it. And I am in control as to whether or not I want someone else to see it.
Yeah.
So with my
I can just imagine, going to the beach. You don't necessarily want to have it on your abdomen. And speaking of going to the beach, what about when you go in the water?
Yeah, so that's another advantage of the OmniPod. The pod itself is waterproof, so I can go swimming or whatever without having to take it off. Whereas the tubed pumps, you disconnect them usually somewhere around the infusion set site, and you take it off when you are showering or bathing or swimming or whatever. So that's one of the advantages of wearing an OmniPod is that you are constantly being infused with insulin because when I was on multiple daily injections, I was taking 3 different types of insulin. One that was fast acting that I would use when I ate, one that lasted about 24 hours, and one that lasted about 12 hours. So
what's the difference in those different types of insulin? And I'm asking you these questions just so our listeners kind of have a better idea of what you go through.
Yeah, sure. So the different type of insulins, you would take a mixture of them just based on how long they last. Okay. So what normal people, not diabetics, are making insulin all the time, and their body is able to adjust the amount of insulin it releases based on what they're eating or what they're doing or whatever. So type 1 diabetics don't make any insulin at all, so we have to take it. Well, if you're on multiple daily injections, if you were to be taking only fast-acting insulin, you would have to be giving yourself a shot about once an hour, if not more, just because that's how long the insulin lasts. Now, with a pump, I only use fast-acting insulin because it's constantly infusing a little bit of insulin that I program per hour into my body. And then when I eat, I just tell my pump, hey, I'm going to eat some carbs, give me some more insulin, and that's what it does. But when you're on injections, people typically use at least 2 types of insulin, sometimes 3, so that they have some on board that lasts, 24 hours or so, and then they'll take the short-acting insulin when they eat.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like I was going somewhere else with that, and I can't remember what it was.
That's okay. I asked you to describe that, so our listeners just kind of knew the process.
Yeah.
That you went through.
Sure. I think that was it about that.
So it's really insightful to kind of hear what you go through. And I know about type 1 diabetes. I know about insulin pumps, but very rarely do you actually get to hear the stories, because besides you, I don't think I know anyone else that's
really?
type 1 diabetic. Yeah.
That's cool.
I know some type 2 diabetics, but it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So tell us more about the work that's really cool that you give back, and you volunteer a lot with JDRF. So tell us what that looks like, and if there's, just your experiences with that, and if there's anything really inspiring that's happened or what you've done that was really fun.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So the main thing that I do for JDRF is fundraising. They claim that they are the leading organization to fund research that improves the lives of type 1 diabetics. So they are constantly looking for a cure for type 1 diabetes, but also in the meantime, they're doing things to help improve the way that we manage our diabetes. So one of the things that I'm really excited about that they're working on is that they're trying to create an artificial pancreas. So in addition to wearing a pump like I have, people who are on the artificial pancreas trials, they are wearing a continuous glucose monitor, which is also a different piece of equipment that I wear. But in addition to those two things, they're also wearing another device, an additional pump that has some sort of glucose or glucagon or something in it, so that the continuous glucose monitor is constantly checking their blood sugar, and then it's telling either the insulin pump or the glucose pump to, you know, hit the gas or pump the brakes depending on what their blood sugar is doing, which I think is really awesome. Yeah. It's trying to mimic the way that typical people's pancreas work. But so that's, sorry, got off on a little tangent, but that's the fundraising aspect of JDRF. And then the other thing that JDRF does is that they try to connect families or people with type 1 diabetes to other people who also have the disease, so that we can be mentors and just kind of help them figure out what's going on if they're recently diagnosed, or not that we take the place of their endocrinologist by any means, but just help them maybe act like they have a friend that has, you know, is in a similar situation. So that's something else that I do for them. I'm a mentor, which I think is really cool. Back in the day, before the internet, I remember my mom used to take me to type 1 diabetes support meetings. So it's kind of like that, but we are able to develop a one-on-one relationship with each other, just to kind of be each other's cheerleaders and help us through the day-to-day, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that's good. And I think support is always the best, when you can get support. And even with our listeners, they're going through developing a medical device, so if they're around others that are doing the same thing, you know, they can share their stories. And I mean, they can even get that by listening to the podcast, so that's good. So you mentioned all the research being done on the artificial pancreas and the continuous glucose monitor. I know that you said you also have one of those. Kind of get into how that fits into your system.
Sure. So I am currently on a Dexcom continuous glucose monitor. It's awesome. I have a little sensor that I wear. It's currently on my leg. Sometimes I wear it on my arm. I basically could put it anywhere I put my OmniPod, except that I try to keep the two separate at all times. But the way it works is it actually talks to my iPhone, which is really cool. Wow. So I used to have a little receiver that I would have to carry around in addition to my pump and glucometer and phone and everything else. It reads my blood sugar every 5 minutes. And what's super helpful about it is that it also is able to detect trends. So it knows whether or not my blood sugar is going up or down, and it also knows whether I'm going up or down in a fast or slow manner. So it's really helpful. I like to be somewhere between 80 to 120 for my blood sugar every day. So but sometimes if I'm writing at 85, let me take a step back. So if I were to check my blood sugar and it says I was 85, that's in target, so it's perfect. But what the continuous glucose monitor is able to tell me, in addition to just that one single number, is the fact that whether I'm stable at 85 or if I'm about to go up from 85 or go down from 85. So it's really nice so that I can anticipate the changes in my body, so that I can avoid lower lows and really high highs based on the information that it's able to give me. The other really cool thing about being on a CGM, continuous glucose monitor, is that you are able to see all of your peaks and valleys in between finger sticks. So before I got on a CGM, I I'm not going to claim I'm a really good diabetic because I feel like I have, it ebbs and flows. Sometimes
I think
I'm
you
better
are.
at it than
Just listening to you, you're so proactive, and sometimes people aren't. And then they just do the injections and the finger sticks, and they're just not as. It seems like you've really refined your system, and you've found the tools that work for you to make your life easier. But you're also just on top of your health.
Well, I try to be. Today, I'm not going to lie, this week is a really good week. I am doing well, but sometimes I get tired of it and I don't wear my CGM, and, I lose a little bit of my control, but it's all good. But when I'm not wearing my CGM, so the downfall for me about the continuous glucose monitor, besides the fact that it's an additional device that I have to have attached to my body, is that the adhesive that holds it onto my skin, I have an allergic reaction to. So I currently am using Flonase, which is like an allergy nasal spray. I put that on my skin before I put the Dexcom sensor on, and it helps me from having that allergic reaction to the adhesive. But I don't wear it I wear it, I don't know. Well, recently I've been wearing it a lot because I'm like in a phase where I'm super into taking control of my diabetes. But on the, like a few months ago, I maybe wore it 1 week out of every month. But what is beneficial for me when I do wear it is, unlike when I'm just doing finger sticks, I do see what my blood sugar is doing all 24 hours of the day, as opposed to on a good day, I may check my blood sugar 6 times, but that's only 6 points on a graph. You know what I mean?
Yeah. As opposed to every 5 minutes.
Every 5 minutes. And I love that they integrated the transmitter to phones now, because it's so handy. I don't have to carry around an additional little hockey puck size device. I just have my phone, which is always on me. And with a recent software update, it talks to my Apple Watch. So I can currently look down at my Apple Watch, and I know, not only do I know what my blood sugar is right now, but I also know, like I just checked right now, it's stable, which is awesome. So I don't know who designed that, but that was incredible, and it's amazing.
So if you're listening, or we need to find that person, or that team, I'm sure it's a team. So great job, Dexcom software. It's probably Zigbee or Bluetooth. So good job with that.
It's Bluetooth. It's Bluetooth, and it's awesome. The only thing that I mentioned to Megan before we got started was I wish it was integrated with my insulin pump, which is what MiniMed does have. CGM device that is integrated with their insulin pumps. And when I got on the OmniPod 2 years ago, they're like, oh yeah, we're working with Dexcom to have it integrated as well. And they haven't quite gotten, I think it's hung up on FDA approval, but I'm not totally sure. So that hasn't quite happened yet, but I think like that would be next step, in terms of what they could do to improve it even more. But yeah, as it is now, I'm super happy. Like I drove myself and my dog to Texas a few weeks ago because my brother was getting married, and my husband flew to meet us there because he couldn't get off of work. And it was really handy to be driving and knowing exactly what my blood sugar was doing any time of the day. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It was like, I don't know, it made me so much more confident in doing what I was doing. I don't know. It's crazy. It's hard to explain, but it's all good.
Yeah. So I know some engineers are listening out there, and I want you to tell this story. I heard you say it before, just about the OmniPod failing sometimes, and what that can do, what that's like for you, and maybe some safeguards that you're doing that could be integrated into the system.
Yeah. So I mentioned to Megan that one of the things I really liked about my MiniMed system was that it was super reliable. I occasionally had an infusion site issue, but those were not common at all. I was on a mini-med pump for 10 years, and I feel like I could count on my two hands how often that happened. With the OmniPod, however, because each pod is a disposable item, so I wear my pod for 3 days at a time, and then I take it off, I throw it away, and then I put insulin in a new one, and I put a new one on. I feel like it's hard for them to attain really good quality control on each of those items. So I told Megan a couple of times I was driving down the highway. Actually, you know what? I told you twice, but it's actually been 3 times. I forgot. There was a third time this happened. I was driving down the highway, and all of a sudden my pump failed. It's just a really big inconvenience to have to pull over. One of the times I didn't even have any extras on me, so I had to go home and change it. Yeah. So the other 2 times I happened to have extras on me, which was amazing. But basically I have to stop what I'm doing and take off the pod that I currently have on and put a new one on. I also mentioned that happened. I was in the middle of photographing a wedding ceremony and one died, and that I feel like was most traumatic just because I didn't have the freedom to go leave in that moment and take care of what I needed to do.
Yeah.
So that was a little stressful. So if there's a way that we could get the failure rate, to improve a little bit, that would be amazing. I think that's the main thing.
So when that happens, does your Dexcom CGM alert you, or do you just feel it?
No. So actually the OmniPod does have all of these safety checks and balances built in, which is good. Yeah. So every time that's happened, it's alerted me. Like I wouldn't know until probably a few hours later that it wasn't working. I wouldn't know until at least an hour, probably 2 or 3 hours later, that it wasn't infusing insulin like it should. But what happens is it gives off this really obnoxious, high-pitched screech.
Oh, yeah, and if you're shooting a wedding,
yes, I know. Yes.
A really intimate time, and then this thing goes off.
Luckily, when I was doing that wedding, it was on the beach, and it was super windy, and so I don't think people notice it that much, but I was just like, oh my gosh, if I were in the middle of a church wedding, like I don't know what I would have done, because it squeals, and then no matter what you do, it doesn't stop squealing until it's ready. I think it's like 20 or 30 seconds, which is not that long, generally speaking, but if you're in the middle at the front of the aisle of a wedding, it's obnoxious.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's another thing. Maybe it can, I mean, it's got to do something like that for safety, but maybe it can have a switch that you turn it off. Exactly. You say, okay, I hear you. I'm turning it off.
Because that time at the wedding, I remember so the controller to my OmniPod was back in my camera bag, which was in the back of this ceremony. So I ran back there as quickly as I could to try to get it to shut up. But no matter what button I pressed on the controller, like it wouldn't stop. And I was just like, please stop. I was like holding my hand over where it was on my body so that trying to muffle the noise, it was, I don't know, it was crazy. Yeah. So I mean, in all instances where my pod failed, it like, I don't know, it turned out fine, but it's just super frustrating in the moment for that to happen. Because, as you know, we're relying on these devices to take care of us and to work properly. And so when something like that happens, it's like when my phone battery dies. I'm like, oh, why aren't you working?
Yeah.
And obviously I can charge it. It's like, it's a fixable problem. But I think the most frustrating thing is there's no warning. Like all of a sudden my pump will just be like, oh, I'm dead now. And well, that would have been cool to know 10 minutes ago or whatever it is,
Yeah, so that's some other great feedback.
Yeah. We're like, hey, because I feel like with the OmniPod, they're so in tune to shutting down if there's a problem. They don't I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel like there's no troubleshooting mechanism. hey, Lauren, I'm not sure if I'm working properly, so I'm going to keep working, or at least try to keep working for the next 10 minutes or so, but you might need to change me soon, type of thing. That'd be cool. So I don't know. I just came up with that just right now. So
no, that's great.
If anyone's listening and can implement that.
Yes, that's what we want. So besides that awesome feedback, and there's a lot of takeaways that we as a medical device industry can work on and continuously prove to address, not only with that system, but really working on that artificial pancreas too, and making that happen. I actually know of a company that's working on one, and
cool.
I'd love to connect you guys. If you're,
that'd be awesome. Yeah.
So I'll do that. Is there anything else, if you were to just see someone tomorrow that is working on all these things, is there anything else that you would just like to share with them about what you go through as a patient and what would be better?
I don't think there's anything specific I would share besides what I already did, but I would say thanks.
All right. That's always a great thing.
Yeah. I'd much rather, even with the failures, I'd much rather be wearing an insulin pump, just because I'm able to fine tune my control over the insulin that I'm taking, than, taking injections all the time. So yeah, I mean, I think with anything there are a couple of drawbacks here and there, but overall, I really like the system that, either any type of insulin pump. I think they're awesome. I always recommend them to people that I hear are still on injections. And I think with, help from you and other people in the device industry, they can only get better from here.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thanks so much for being on the show today and
no problem.
Giving
Thanks
us
for having
your story.
Me. Of course. Yeah, this is fun. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Happy to. So, hey guys listening, I hope you had some great takeaways from Lauren's story. And if you're out there working on an insulin pump, then you just have a gold mine of feedback right here and someone that is willing to connect with you and just talk with you about what she goes through and how to improve. So take advantage of that. Lauren, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Like social media or email, anything that you want to share?
Sure. So you can find me off my website. It's laurennygard.com. It's LaurenNygard.com. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I think all of my usernames are just Lauren Nygard. But you could be able to find a link off my website or just email me from there. My email address is lauren@laurennygard.com. Because I guess I'm really, I don't know. Everything's my name, I feel.
That's great. It's easy and it's consistent. And she has great pictures on there. You are just amazing. I got down a rabbit hole last night and I just kept looking at all your Instagram photos. So if you need a photographer and you're on the East Coast, that's your girl. But she does like to travel. She has family in Texas and a big friend network out here in California too. So get a hold of her for that. You're welcome. So I also want to point out that you can jump on our Facebook group. We talked about support earlier. I know a lot of you are going through your journey in medical device development. So just being able to connect with others, to bounce ideas around, not share any IP, of course, but just the journey and just the struggles that you all go through, the commonalities that people have. We have a spot for that. So in Facebook, search Inspired by Amua, and that's our group right there. You can connect with some great people. And until the next episode, Amua.
Mahalo for joining us. If you're new to riding the waves of medical device product development, or if you've been in development for a while already, Inspired by Amua is here to surf with you. Want to be a master of the waves? Text HANG10, that's all one word, HANGTEN, to 44222. We'll send you the most common wipeouts companies make in product development so you can avoid them and reach master wave status. Again, that's HANG10 to 44222. We publish a new episode every Tuesday, so catch us at inspiredbyamua.com. Imua.